We have this. Okay, so logistics. If you're able to please stay on camera, as you know, I love to see you. I love to see your face. I love to see your reactions. If you want to frown at me, give me side eye, do whatever. I need those reactions because that's how I know if I'm on track or if I'm not on track. How are you receiving what I'm offering? All of that really helps me, have this conversation. Second is every time I do this, people want to know, why are you doing? So I want to be very transparent as to why I am doing this. I have two reasons. One is altruistic and one is transactional. So the altruistic reason is when I was going through writing, no one told me the things I'm about to tell you. And I just wish somebody had told me that, and that it wasn't as hard as it feels, when you're going through this place of stuckness, this place of self-doubt. And I'll tell you my story in a minute. So I really wish somebody would have told me that. And I also know that not everybody can have access to me or can have time to work with, can like really have me pour into them. Not everybody is in a position to have that, to receive that, or whatever. And so for however much, if I could do this even just on a broad level for a larger group of people, to just gear people on a path maybe that might help them, I'm happy to do that. The transactional nature is somewhere along the conversation today. I might talk about a mentoring program that I have that allows us to go and work really deeply with each other. You're under no obligation to do anything about it, purchase anything, nothing, because I want to make sure that this isn't transactional, but this is informational, where you will have some information about that and you can decide today or later on if that is even a curiosity of yours. And if it is, then you will be invited to complete a form. But we will talk about that later. So two reasons, altruistic and transactional. If you delete the transactional portion and only just focus on what I'm going to say, it'll still be very helpful and it'll still move forward. And that's why I need to see your faces, because then I need to see, like, how are you receiving this? Are you smiling? Are you nodding? Are you frowning? All of that is super helpful to me. Okay, my story. All right. So, what I'm going to share with you is a time of my life where I couldn't write for 3 years. I know I sent the email and I told you all some things about it. Some of you got it, some of you didn't. So, I'm just going to revisit very quickly. So, I had just received tenure, and I just, my tenure path to tenure was super hard, and I got academically bullied, and I moved my institution to another institution. And I went and I got early tenure within like the first year. So I went up like before I even ended my fourth year, like at the end of my fourth year, almost at the end, sort of like midway, I started having to put the paperwork together, but the deadline was by the end of the fourth year. So it was super hard. Like, so in 4 years, I had to show like I've done 6 years worth of work. So you understand how grueling that was. So when that was done and I got news that I got tenured and promoted, it was very anticlimactic, to tell you the truth, at that point, because I knew what I had lost to arrive at that point, and I knew that I had lost wealth, I had lost mental health, I have lost relationships with folks, been through already a divorce, so I knew exactly what I lost. And so I ended up becoming superbly depressed. And then I also had undiagnosed ADHD, so I didn't know any coping mechanisms on that until like much later on. So that was an issue. We all have some level of trauma. Some of that was unresolved for me, so that was an issue. And on top of that, what I didn't know was that I had empath abilities where I pick up people's stuff. So everybody's stuff around me in academia, I was picking their stress up too, and I had no idea how to separate their energies from mine. So all the people's worries were all on me because I couldn't discern what was mine and what was somebody else's. Everything was like melted together, you know. And plus, a lot of us have learned in our childhood to ingest other people's feelings too, you know. So As a result of that, I froze. I did not write for 3 years. I wrote everything is second that year. Go team late diagnosed ADHD. Yeah. So and please keep talking in chat because I thrive when you chat because ADHD, I'd have no problem if you chat and if you say things you will not disrupt me. I love feeling your energy in any way you want to share. Um, Empath and ADHD, both. So as a result, I was helping students finish their dissertation. There was a high volume of students' dissertations that got finished, except for mine. My stuff was always in progress without making any progress, essentially. And I want to be really vulnerable about this because I have, thanks, yeah, I had I have a lot of professional recognition. I feel like I've done everything in academia. I don't need to accomplish a certain milestone since I'm already full. I mean, there are endowed and distinguished professor ranks, but they're not really the reason why I do what I do. But, I've been recognized for my work. I've been recognized for my scholarship. I've been recognized for my writing. I've been recognized for all of these things. And so people think that these are all of this come easy to folks who have this type of visibility. And I want to just sort of lift the curtain and thin the veil a little bit to share that is not easy. And we freeze. Many of us freeze. It's a very, very human quality to have. And then if you are multiply minoritized, there are multiple other reasons why you're freezing as well. And so I just want to put that on the table so that you can ask me all the questions and we can do the conversation we need to have that I wish somebody had had with me at that time and normalized me just being completely frozen the way I was frozen. Um, Helping was a way of healing from the tenure game for me. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Maureen. That sounds like me helping everyone else and putting off my own writing. Yes, helping everyone else, putting off my own writing. Eventually, I began resentful of my students finishing their dissertation and I was still in progress. So I had to sort of do something differently, to realize like I need to at least have some momentum. I felt like such an imposter. I would take students to writing retreats and I would pour into them and help them, and I wouldn't make progress. And I felt like a super imposter, by doing that. I'm helping everybody. Everybody's singing my praises, but I'm not making a single word advancement. And it's not because I don't know how to type or I don't have good ideas or I don't know how to write good sentences. I know all of those things, which is when I understood that when you are stuck, it is really never about writing. When you lost your mojo, has nothing to do with your writing abilities. So this is where, when the imposter syndrome comes up or the imposter monster comes up, you have to tell yourself like that it's an illusion. It's not because you're an imposter, you don't belong, something else is going on. And then Maureen said helping was a way of healing from the tenure game for me. It takes courage to be you are modeling it. Thank you, Leah. It seems so easy to push off to push off ourselves and our own work to help others. Yes, that's a coping strategy called out by everything. I say, okay, I should hide. I've been stuck for 2. Thank you for sharing that, Melanie. Thank you for sharing that. Forgot I had a appointment at 3:15. Hope to come back. Love listening to you. What you're saying is resonating. Tons with me. Thank you for recording. Off, of course. Okay. All right. So that's what I was doing. So this morning I was helping a student of mine, and I was working with her. She's a Black woman, and I was working with her, and she's giving me her chapters to read, and I'm reading this, and this has happened many times. So when I read it, intuitively, I'm picking up certain things from the writing, and then of course I can give you technical feedback on the writing. Intuitively, what I'm picking up is she's writing to defend herself to white folks. That's what I was picking up. She was writing to defend. So the whole time I'm saying, you are up here with your arms and guard up, and you're like, that white professor would say this to me, so I put this sentence down. That white professor will say that to me, so I put this sentence down. And so as I'm talking, I'm like, this is your trauma front and center, on paper. What if you were writing for an earlier version of you, first year version of you, who would have loved to see this? Would she like to see you center your trauma, or would she like to see you in all your power and realize that these white professors are not your primary audience? Your people are your primary audience, Allied folks are your secondary audience. Culturally distant white professors who don't support you are your could be nowhere in your field, or maybe a tertiary audience. Do you want to write for the tertiary audience's gaze, or do you want to write for your own audience's gaze? And it really shifts your writing. So of course I could have given her technical feedback, which I did, which was like, hey, organize this way, give me an advanced organizer about what's going to happen. Of course there's a technicality that I can offer you, but it's not like she doesn't understand that. She's brilliant. She created her own conceptual framework because nothing fit, and she's super brilliant, and she's writing like she's apologizing for even existing. But not that she's saying that, it's just the educational trauma that makes her think that, oh, everybody, I'm under attack all the time, so I better just be ready to defend. And so a lot of times when I mentor folks to write, I mentor people to write from a place of wholeness, so that you are breaking some of the established rules, so that you figure out what is your voice in the work that you're doing. All right, I'm going to look at the chart. How can we speak to earlier versions of ourselves and get published? Where are those journals? I didn't learn about this kind of writing while in grad school. Alicia Brunson, how can we speak to earlier versions of ourselves and get published? Oh, I see. How can you speak to a former versions of yourself and get published? You might want to look at, there's a cultural studies critical methods piece I wrote on, I think, called the Healed Warrior or something like that. Healed Warrior, I think. Go to my research kit, you'll find it. I literally wrote a letter to my earlier version of myself as a way to come full circle, because I no longer wanted to have the oppositional relationship with the oppressor oppressed as the entirety of where my energy went to manage the relationship. Because what happened was, when I centered that and put all my energetic resources in there, time, money, resources, psychological resources, intellectual resources, I had no more room to figure out what nurtures me, because I'm fighting all the time, and I'm fatigued like hell as a result of fighting all the time. So Alicia, that's helping. That's where that exists. I defended cultural studies, critical methodologies will publish it. Qualitative inquiry will publish it. In Journal of Autoethnography will publish it. And if you want, try my journal too, Departures in Critical Qualitative Research, and see if, look to see where you're making a departure and send it, and I'll consider it too. Galicia says, you defended last year and had all these plans for publishing and definitely feel stuck, although I've never had difficulty being motivated, did 3 grad degrees and never felt stuck like this. Okay, so I will tell you this, for those of you who are just finishing off your dissertation and you feel you can't write anything anymore, it's because you wrote all the words in your dissertation. That was a process and a half. It took a long time. You probably had certain barriers and challenges. And if you had certain trauma associated with it, it's your spirit saying, give me a break. So don't pathologize that. Don't pathologize and think that something is wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you. You're being asked to listen to your spirit, to listen to your body. You are being asked for a little bit of reprieve before you look at it again with a fresh pair of eyes. So please do not make it something that something is wrong with you because of that. All right. It's that resonated with my writing dissertation. Super scary to do this, but so important. Yes. Thank you, Samia. Thank you. Diving deep. Yes. Thank you, Samia. I really appreciate you putting that out there. Love the tip of writing to one's own primary audience. Absolutely. So I will tell you 3 things that come up when you are stuck and you're trying to reactivate your writing mojo. And today I will work with one of you, or maybe more than one of you, depending on how it goes. You know how people say hot seat? I'm not going to call it hot seat. I'm going to call it love seat. And I'm going to work through, and I'm going to show you how you can take a stuckness and use the stuckness as an entryway and pathway to a possibility, instead of being like in oppositional relationship with the stuckness, as if the stuckness is bad, or you're bad for having the stuckness, or you have to bust through the stuckness. I'm going to make the stuckness be something you embrace and move into it. So not post PhD yet, but still deeply appreciate the remember to not pathologize this writing stuckness. Yes. Okay, so 3 things if you are trying to reactivate your writing mojo, there's three things potentially going on. There could be more, but three definitely. One is fear. There's some sort of fear, fear of not being seen, fear of being seen, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of belongingness. All some level of fear is showing up. Either it's fear or shame. One of those two emotions are coming up. I'll tell you why. Writing is self-expression. It's an expression of yourself scribed. This is permanently scribed. Once you write, once it's published, it's permanently scribed. And if there is an issue with you and your expression of self, as in like somewhere along the line you learned that expression of self the way you want to is going to be under attack, is going to be hostile for you, is going to be dangerous for you, is going to be harmful for you, is going to bring you shame, then all of that, I promise you, even if you don't consciously address it, will show up in your stuckness. It absolutely does. You have to dig a little bit deeper, but sometimes the writing is you scribing yourself into matter. You literally write, and your writing gets printed out into paper, and your thoughts become matter. And so that's a really big deal, and they live forever after that. So whatever relationship you have with self, voice, self-expression, being free in your thoughts, whatever that is, if you have history from before that have taught you that this is unsafe for whatever reason, there are some fears attached to it. Whatever the global archetypes of fears are, rejection, abandonment, isolation, belongingness, visibility, invisibility, all of those are broad patterns of it. Chances are you have some of that. Second reason for stuckness is a purpose and clarity issue. So a purpose and clarity issue would be like where you're writing, but you're not motivated by the purpose of what you're doing as much, or you don't have clarity. So if you don't have clarity and you're writing in the voice that you think you're supposed to write in, right? So we have a sense of this is what an academic voice sounds like, this is what a theory voice sounds like, and you think that you have to write in that voice. And if you want to write in that voice, you no longer write like you write like whoever you're trying to mimic, you know then you don't have clarity. Then the thing that you're writing doesn't even have a whole lot of important things to say. And I cannot tell you how many things I've read that are obscure as shit but says the most basic things, like we're all interconnected, but you have said it over like 50 pages of obscure stuff. Didn't need that. So what I am saying is that if you don't have clarity, your writing will suffer. If you don't have a sense of purpose, and by purpose, I don't mean purpose of the paper. Purpose of the paper could be, I need to get published. Purpose of the paper could be, I need to finish the dissertation. Purpose of the paper would be, shit, there's a deadline, this needs to get done. That can be purpose. But I'm talking, as you know, as I always talk about, depth. The purpose has to be way deeper than that, so that when you have dark days and you have a larger than life imposter monster surrounding you and enveloping you, your purpose is the thing that pulls you out of that rut. And that has to be a much deeper purpose. Hey, Mangfei, good to see you. So that has to be, a much deeper purpose. So that's the purpose. And then the third, which I've been talking about, is your power leaking to two sources, your inner critic and the outer critic. So inner critic is everything that is self-doubt, imposter master version of you. Hi, Milat, good to see you. In imposter monster version of you. Outer critic is everybody whose opinion matters to you. So that could be the the dissertation committee members, that could be reviewer twos, that could be an editor, that could be whoever you think is the outer person that is a gatekeeper that you need to go through, or whoever's opinion really is important to you. Those are where your power starts to leak, because you give them more power than you give yourself power. So you give the outer external source more power, and if they don't like what you said, then it's not good, or at least you internalize it's not good. And then you have your inner critic, and I don't know that anybody could be any harder on themselves. I mean, anybody external can be any harder on you than probably what you are to yourself. And this is something I've said before. The kind of shit we say to ourselves, we would never say that to a fellow human being ever. Like, so for example, if you say to yourself, I don't belong in academic world, I don't belong in writing, I am an imposter, I don't belong. Let's say you said that to yourself, I don't know how to write, I don't belong. I dare you to go up to somebody face to face, none of this Zoom thing, face to face, look them in their eyes, flesh, body, and say, you do not belong in academia, you do not know how to write, and your writing sucks. I don't know how many of you would feel comfortable going up and saying this to any other human being, but you somehow have decided that you are deserving of that kind of energy, that kind of thought, that kind of criticism of self. And so I just want to say, stop it. Don't do it. Just don't do it. I don't have any magical pathway other than to say, stop it right now. Ask yourself, would you say that? Would you say that to anybody, to your friends, to your colleagues, to your advisor, to your students? Would you say that to anyone? If you're not going to say that to anyone, certainly you don't deserve that either. You do not deserve to be at the receiving end of that. So this power leakage to other people and not anchoring yourself in your own authenticity, own genius, own brilliance, own power is another reason for your stuckness, because you don't trust yourself, so that's another reason. All right, way too accurate. Oh, the negative self-talk is accurate. What about the stuckness from other traumatic things that might happen, illness, death, that is a variation of an. Yes, I appreciate that, Emily. Like, if that happens, then self-compassion, absolute self-compassion, that if you have death, because when all of this nonsense was happening, my mom had stage 4 cancer diagnosis in addition to all this nonsense. So I had to like stop teaching, assign somebody to teach my class and then fly away for her surgeries and everything else, because she lived in a different city in the US. And students got mad, gave me bad eval because I wasn't there to teach them, and I'm like, my mom has cancer, figure shit out. I've already assigned somebody to help you, have some compassion. But you have to have a lot of compassion for yourself. Take whatever time you need. Literally, the work is always going to be there. Take whatever time you need to bring back yourself into balance, and then ease into it. Ease into it without any expectation. Don't make yourself right or wrong. If you just want to write, if you just want to say, I am not able to write like for a whole hour, but I might be able to write for 10 minutes just to write. Then you just become familiar with the practice of writing and just start to write with that. You just start to write by giving yourself permission to write even 10 minutes, even 15 minutes. Even if you're not writing, you begin to start doing the work of, like looking at literature, annotating certain things, doing just, your thought dumping as free write. All of those things are writing. Just because you're not writing a clean sentence to the bone doesn't mean you're not writing, which brings me to this point. You have to absolutely have to love your writer's identity, whatever that identity is in that period of time. So stuck writer identity, writing bad sentence writer identity, disorganized writer identity, confused writer identity, whatever version of fogginess you are in when you are writing initial thoughts and drafts, you have to love yourself in that version. Because if you expect yourself to write that perfect sentence every time you're writing, you're going to stop. You're going to stop after 2 sentences going, no, none of these sentences are coming out really as clean as a bone. Very few people can write first draft and their sentences are tight and their paragraphs are tight and their whole thing is tight. Very, very few people can. So you have to love as many ways you can mess up. Give yourself permission to be the shittiest writer that you can be, and then just say, this is how I write today. Tomorrow I'll write differently, but this is how I write today. And it's okay, because you attended to that version of yourself. Instead of saying you are not worthy, that's what you're really saying when you don't write. You're not worthy to put thoughts on paper because you suck somewhere, some version of that. And you're saying that. And then if you think and say that, then that gets mirrored by the world to you in some way. And then you have reinforced that version. See what I said? All right. Way too accurate. There's a nice. I had a college professor tell me I couldn't write. I struggled to believe that I could. College professor sucks goats testicles. I'm just gonna say that they should not have said that to you. So tell me who it is. I will send them some cow dung or something as a gift. You know. All right. Healing and loving ourselves. Okay. So what I want to do, this is all recorded over here. So I'm just being fearless. Okay, what I want to do is I want to give you a prompt and I want you to finish the prompt. And based on how you finish the prompt, I'll ask you to join me in the love seat. Okay, so I want to, the prompt is if I were to write exactly the way, exactly, exactly the way I want to write, comma, I fear that, complete that sentence. Whichever way you want to complete that sentence in chat and post it. And then we're going to do some how to leverage the stuckness to strength. Will the recorded video be distributed in a social media group later? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll upload it into YouTube and I'll put the link up. If I were to write, hold on, let's see. If I were to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear that I will be seen and then I won't be safe. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Laura. Florence says, my audience won't understand what I'm writing because English is my second language. Okay. What I've written and won't make sense. Okay. I might go crazy. It would not make sense to any other human being. Okay. I might seem crazy. Let's see. I would never stop writing. Oh my God, that is awesome. Although it's a fear. If I were to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear that the naysayers will be proven correct. Ooh, Leah, this is juicy. It's making me want to work with you in a minute. I would neglect all other parts of my job and my papers would not be accepted. Interesting. I would be viewed as one who can't compose academic worthy articles. If I were to write exactly, I fear that I won't have enough canonical theory to back up my ideas. I love this. I might follow up on this. So hold on. Erica and Leah, you're like tingling me intuitively. The Erica and Leah. I am not even looking at the humans as much as I'm just looking at like who can I pull. Alicia, I fear that I will be blamed for expressing the pain I and others feel. Ooh, Alicia, that's also really powerful. Okay. Tammy, my ideas would not be interesting enough for others to care. Yes. And Tammy, we worked through that a fair bit and I see it returning. So it's a deep one. It's a deep, deep one. It wouldn't be academic enough. Yes. So Chinasa, that's a really powerful one too. If I were to write exactly the way I want to, I fear that it will be called weird. Galicia, these are like gold. These are gold as in like the programming that we have. If I were to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear that I wouldn't do a good enough job honoring the students I have worked with. Interesting. I might be wrong. Okay, that's a perfectionism thing, which is a trauma response, as I said many times before. My absolute best one scene would not be good enough, be revealed as mediocre. That was me for a really, really long time, Monique. It's like, well, if I write shitty, at least if I didn't make the full effort and I write shitty, then I have an excuse for myself. Like I could have made more effort, but that's the reason why it's not as good as it could be. But if I put all the effort and it's not as good as it could be, then like, oh my God, I have to accept that I'm mediocre. Yeah, I feel you. I've been there. Uh, Not be seen as theoretical enough. So this is coming up quite a bit. Samia is coming up theoretical enough. So Samia is theoretical enough. It would be used against me, Sneha. It would be used against me. Oh my God, you all want me to call you all to the front. Okay. Sean, if I were to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear that the journal police force would try to have me conform to preferred voice rather than mine. Sean, that's also powerful. Others will tell me it's too poetic or not narrow enough. Berenice, too woo-woo, not academic enough. Berenice, that's also beautiful. Mia, for to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear the white readers will feel very hurt. Mia, white readers will feel very hurt and will gatekeep me out of academic successes. Donna, I wouldn't be original, significant, theoretical enough. There's a lot of theoretical would not be received as intellectual. It would be rejected or questioned, might not understand it as a thing. I may reveal, Anuja, if I were to write exactly on, I fear that I might not have a lot of content and fear plagiarizing. That's so what is your own voice? So that's Anuja's. Ooh, there are so many good ones here to work with. Miguel says, I would be writing not would not seem academic and more story-like. Okay. Cat Stevens, then my language is not academic, even though it's enough and too every day. Melba is, if I were to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear that my audience would think it's too non-Western and the indigenous think I'm an imposter. Oh, the hybrid location. Hybrid location. Rosina, I would be told it's too specific, particular, situated in perspective. Okay, there's a lot here that I can work with. Okay, so Rosina, Mia, Anuja, Sean, Sneha, Samhia, Galicia, Erica, Leah, Alicia, and Chinasa. Out of all of you, who wants to be the first volunteer to come to the love seat? One of you, raise your Zoom hand. Raise your Zoom hand. Somebody raise your Zoom hand, otherwise I'm calling on you directly. Off the names that I said. Erica, are you volunteering, Monique? You're volunteering, Erica? Let me see. I can't see my Erica. Okay, Erica. All right, let's start with Erica. Erica Spotlight. Okay, Erica, you are now spotlighted. Tell me your thing again. If what was the fear?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry that I'm masked today. I have COVID, so I have to
Oh,
have a mask on in my house. Um, I am, I can consistently receive feedback, really wonderful feedback around making sure that I am grounding my ideas in the work of the people who I know, right? Who I identify with. The place that I'm having trouble is uh, I have throughout my coursework or written papers that don't necessarily uh, are not necessarily using those scholars. And so now here I am at the end of coursework, and I really have a desire to use particularly Black feminist and womanist thought.
yeah.
And but I've only taken one class there,
Okay.
and I've been trying to read on my own and just gather on my own, and so that's where I am. I am now in the stage where I'm coming down to like writing some more generative work that's gonna hopefully live on, and so I
Okay.
need help there.
So tell me, like, what did you say that you would fear? Remind me again, because I know it was powerful. I wrote it down. So remind me one
Yeah,
more time.
it's that my work won't be grounded in enough theory to support my ideas.
Okay, so this is a good one because I want to address, I knew that the theory thing was important because a lot of people have been talking about the theory. So first of all, why do you think it's not going to be grounded in enough theory? You said BFT and womanism. So where is this deficit coming from? What do you think? Do you not think BFT and womanism is theory enough?
I do. I
Okay.
just I think it's coming from a fear that I haven't read enough.
Oh, okay. So that's an easy one to solve. You haven't read enough, it's easy to solve. Read more. Like that's a linear solution that does I don't have to dig a lot more deeper. But what happens in some of these scenarios is that folks, like especially Black women, when they want to do BFT or womanist or CRT or intersectional work, they might be surrounded by faculty member who don't think that those are theory enough, because they're not white theorists, basically,
Mhm,
and they
mhm.
would ask you to like pair it with something else to make it a theory. So this is broadly speaking, when that happens, say no. have a good justification to say this is theory. BFT is my ontology and epistemology, and then I'm using womanism as my theoretical framework, and out of these two theories, if that's what you're doing, then out of these two theories, I am compelled to break the traditional norms of writing, which means I will write in first person, which means my writing will be more creative, which means that there's going to be a lot of first person Black women voices that you're going to see. You may even do like an epilogue of like reading this dissertation. If dissertation is what you're doing, then you want to like maybe even start in the beginning and have that done. But the stuckness that you don't have enough because you haven't read or because there wasn't enough classes offered, you know it's just you telling yourself lots of different deficit stuff, but you're going to have to read more than what you read in your coursework. It's just a given. Everybody has to, right? So you're going to have to read more than what you have been given in your coursework. So read as much as you can, and read dissertations, other dissertations that have done like black feminist thought and womanism. So I'm going to give you one of my former students name here that she did that, and um, she even created her own analytical framework, like methodological framework. You will see this. Just read her dissertation, Keandria McLeish. So that was through womanism and BFT. So I think, and then Venus Evans Winter's work in my series, that was on Black feminist qualitative research as well. So read through that too. That'll give you a lot of like voice. Venus writes with a very powerful Black feminist voice. That'll give you a lot of that. Stephanie Tolliver's dissertation is probably embargoed, but In Dark and Story work isn't. So read Stephanie Tolliver's work for In Dark and Story work, and just see her In Dark and Story work, which she published in my series. It's from her dissertation. She wrote that as a dissertation. She had to write it a little bit more for a white audience, but when she wrote it for my series, I told her to like take the citations that she was using that was performative and put the real stuff in there, like the stuff that she really wanted to say. So she inserted that. Yeah, and Dark and Story work is amazing. Yeah, yeah. So this was easy. I thought I would have to go deep. So Erica, you're in a good situation. Make sure that you just feed your diet with these women. Feed your diet with the Black feminist thought scholars, the womanist scholars. Layli's work is very important in that space, the womanist space. Layli Maparian, her work is super important as in the womanist space. But just feed yourself, and then realize that if anybody gives you a hard time, and this is broadly speaking, anybody gives you a hard time on that theoretical framework that is culturally situated this way, it's your job is not then to spring into defense. Your job is to then invite them into your space, as opposed to trying to defend your work according to the rules that they are subscribing to, because you're not subscribing to those rules, because you're already taking a framework that says everything around us is whiteness centered, therefore I'm going to disrupt it. So you cannot defend your work with the whiteness centering rules. You just cannot. It's a trap. So don't. Invite. How familiar are you with Black feminist thought? Oh, good. Have you read this dissertation? You would see that there's a precedence in Black feminist thought to writing in very creative ways. I wonder if we can have a conversation after you read the dissertation. Like, depends. If they just want to be like power hungry and want to give you a hard time, that's a whole other story. But your first line of response should not be like defending your first line of response should be curiosity about where the person's questions are coming from, inviting them to your face. Yeah. I'm blessed to have a very supportive program that doesn't do that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That is so good. That's good. So thank you, Erica.
Yeah, my COVID reading is actually two books that you mentioned, the Tolliver and the Evans Winter. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's awesome. Well, Keandria had her dissertation embargoed, but it's no longer embargoed. So if you just look it up it's from Kansas State University. So if you just go K-Rex and then just her name, it should totally bring up the dissertation and you can read that dissertation too. And that has BFT and womanism in there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Rosina, Mia, Anuja, Sean, Sneha, Samiha, Galicia, Leah, Alicia, and Chinasa. Share your hand. Anuja, I see you first. Come on up.
Hi, Dr. Bhattacharya. How are you doing?
I am doing great, Anuja. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Tell me, what is the fear? What is the fear? If you write the way you want to write, you fear that. And I thought yours was juicy too.
Yes. So my fear is that I fear that I don't have a lot of content to add. And sometimes I feel like if I do start writing, I would probably be plagiarizing
Oh, it's a
other
voice
people's
thing.
work.
It's a voice thing. Okay. It's a voice thing. Okay. So Anuja's fear is, if I understand Anuja, understand you correctly, your fear is that you are really just summarizing things from what you're reading. So anytime you're saying something, what is the new thing that you're saying? Everything that can be said has been said. Everything that can be written has been written. So you're just paraphrasing and citing and so it feels very stale, essentially.
It
Okay.
does. Yes.
Yes, yes, it's so hard to come up with new ideas on your own. Yes, 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 same. Okay, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. So glad. This is super, super common to have and to feel this. So what you have to think about is, what is Anuja's way of thinking about it? You have to make a claim that what you are saying is not brand new. It's absolutely not brand new. Like, so right now, like I did a keynote for ICQI and I talked about absurdity. I made sure I said, I am not the first one to talk about absurdity as inquiry. I am alchemizing this idea with my sensibilities. That's all you're doing. These ideas exist and you're building upon existing ideas. You're bringing an idea to a conversation alchemized with your sensibilities, the special chemistry that Anuja can bring to the table. So you come from a background, and I don't know if it has affected you the way it had affected me. You come from a educational background where you personally should not have an opinion. Like you come from a background where teachers give you what they give you. You're supposed to learn it and memorize it and regurgitate it back to the teacher. For you to have your own critical opinion and have a perspective on it and then write from that perspective, it's not a learned skill. It's a skill when you come to the West, you see that people are expecting you to do that and you're like, oh shit, I never learned how to do that. I thought I would legit fail my dissertation when they asked me what did I think. They were like, oh, it's clear you read all these things, but what do you think? And I'm like, wait, you never taught me how to answer that. You told me nothing's important until I cite it, and now you want me to tell me what I think? Like, I haven't been trained to think like that. I legit thought I will fail. So this is the skill you need to learn. How do you cultivate Anuja's voice? So you're going to have to give yourself permission to think to ascribe the thoughts that you think, to not censor your thought as if it's good, if it's new, if it's fresh or not. You're just going to say, what is it evoking for you. So when you read a piece, when you're reading something, don't just summarize the piece that you're summarizing. Begin to pull out direct quotes you know from your writing, from whatever it is that you're reading. Begin to pull out direct quotes. Underneath those direct quotes, start writing your own thoughts down, like, so I am writing this, and start writing your own thoughts as to, I think this, I feel this, It's only for your eyes, but you need to give yourself permission to think as a scholar who's engaging and getting into conversation with the author that you're reading. As you're doing this, eventually you're going to have certain perspectives, that are your perspectives. You don't have to say that is your own unique perspective. You just have to say that is the perspective where you are locating yourself. And in that location, you're in conversation with XYZ, whoever else is in conversation with. You're in conversation. So for example, when I was doing this work and when I was coming up to do this work, I had Norman Denzin asked me, how does your work differ from Devika Chawla's work, who was doing some Desi work as well? I didn't want to have this oppositional conversation with Devika's work because I want, like, the two of our work to have ample space in predominantly white, discursive space of qualitative research. So I said, Devika's work does this, my work adds to the conversation in this way. So to not say that I'm oppositional or I am brand new, something that Devika has never said, I am saying like this still needs to be discussed, and I'm bringing this nuanced version of that discussion to the table. So that's your job now, is to think about like, what is Anuja's own perspective? What is your argument through which you can think about this? So this is for everybody. If you are reading literature, if you don't feel like you have your own inner voice, you're not cultivating that voice. You have to cultivate that voice. Every time you read something, break it down, break it down. If you need to know how to do that, there is a literature review sheet, argument chart, on my website. Download the argument chart. It'll have like how to break down an article and then how to have your so what. So you'll have a space where you write your own thoughts, whatever the so what is. And then you look at the so what, zoom out and look at the so what's to say like, what are some patterns you're seeing on the so what's? And that becomes an argument. So for example, a pattern I'm seeing is like, everybody is, not everybody, but there's a lot of conversations about oppressed stuff. And I'm thinking, where's the conversation about healing? I want to have that conversation. Are people having that conversation? Yes, in pockets. So now I'm going to be in dialogue with those people who are having those conversations in those pockets to say, these people are having this conversation. It's making me think this thing. So I'm going to share this. That's the work. That's the only work you're contributing. You're not curing cancer. You're contributing some sentences to an existing conversation. And if you're lucky, you can contribute a whole paragraph. But that's, in the grand scheme of things, that's what's happening with your work.
Okay. I guess I was always just scared that my contribution could be as little as a word or maybe a sentence. When I see other people's work, I feel like they're just producing so much original voice, so much original work. And
Run your own race. Run
okay.
your own race. Do not compare yourself to a single human being. They are gifted with different gifts, and you are gifted with different gifts. You have your different zone of brilliance, and they have their different zone of brilliance. There are people that can be publishing 120 pieces, but maybe they're not all of very high quality, and it doesn't even matter. They could even be the highest quality and the bestest of best. I just had to introduce Groyolets and Billings for a distinguished lecture thing, and I felt like I'd done nothing with my life after I read our whole bio, and I've done plenty of good things, but I read Groyolets and Billings bio and I'm like, ugh, okay, I'll go hide under my desk, but use that as inspiration, but don't feel like you have to be anybody but you. Your benchmarks are just yours, like do the thing that you can do today, and tomorrow stay inspired to continue to do that work. That's the only thing you have to do. You don't have to worry about, and then because you come from the land that I come from, you have to detach yourself from the expectations of your actions, it comes from our book that that we have, So do not stay attached to your actions, do the actions for the sake of the action. This is the right thing to do because this is my purpose. This is why I'm doing the work. And then let the cookie crumble however way it would, because then you have no regret. Even when you return back to it, you knew why you did it. You knew that you had a sense of, righteousness, because this was, maybe it's a righteous rage, maybe it's a righteous advocacy, maybe it's a righteous deep diving, whatever it is, you felt like you were fully in integrity with yourself when you did it, then it doesn't matter how the cookie crumbled, because given another chance, you'd do the same thing. And that's where confidence and authenticity and voice comes from, to have a sense of, an anchoring, and then have a sense of detachment once you're done the work, because you know that you came from a place of alignment. Zone of brilliance. Yeah, lots of gems. Okay, so before we go, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of different things. One is I have a mentoring program where we go much deeper on all of these things, and we have the program that I do has a lot of help, a lot of guided help, a lot of individualized help, lots of different things. You can take a look on my website. I have a lot of details on the program. If anything sparks your interest and you're curious about it, fill out this form. I put the link in the chat. Fill out the form, and that's going to help you. Then I can select it. I have two cohorts that are starting, one in summer and one in fall. And I have a few spots left in that. So if you're interested, then fill out the form, and then I will invite you for an informal interview, and then we'll see if there's a mutual fit. And if what you need is what I can offer, then I will invite you to join the program. If you want to buy me a coffee for today, you can buy me a coffee for today. And then if you want more information about the program, you can go to the program over here. If you want to stay back after 5 to have a little bit more conversation with me, to just, dive a little bit deeper, I can do that too. And I'll stick around, and, all the other people that may have questions to ask me, I want to be able to respond to your question. Leah did that program. Leah did it. Tammy did it. John is currently in the program. Yeah, the program is legit the best thing you could possibly do. I did it last year. It was life-changing. Thank you, Leah. So if that's what you need to do, do it. What I would love to do before you all leave, what I would love to do is I would love to hear like what is a sort of like a gem or a nugget that you're walking away with. And if you are going to stick around longer, then please stick around. But until then, just share with me like what's what stood out to you? What are you walking away with? What landed for you? How do you unspotlight someone? I don't know. Are you okay? Okay, so Ileana was in the program too. That's right. Calculate. Thank you so much. Us, of course, Sean. Amazing. We learned so much about stay the core and the purpose. Alicia, thank you, Alicia. You dropped yours. Give myself permission to be a shitty writer. You must love whatever version of writer you are in the moment. Yes. To use your voice, inner critic, in order to love your writing identity. Read more. Alchemize. I need to stop ghosting myself and contribute to the conversation. Yes, stop ghosting yourself. For sure. The 3 reasons for stuckness, the value of appreciating one rise. Berenice too was in the program. Yes, Berenice was in the program. Anuja, identify my voice, no matter how small or big it is. Do not compare yourself to anyone. Chinasa, we're more harsh on ourselves than others will be. Chinasa, if you want to stay back, I can talk to you about your stuff too. Jem, Monica says, I'm realizing that the worries I hold are now new, not new, and many people struggle with stuckness in writing. I now recognize I'm dealing with inner outer critics clouding my brain and mucking up your voice. So good. Run your own race. Had a moment to see my fear a little bit more clearly. Ah, that's so good. So good, Sneha. Writing, describing yourself, and I feel there should be uncockley merch or something. I have merch ideas I need people to help me with. There's only so much I can do. I'm only one person. Don't defend, distinguish. Yes. Miguel says, words very helpful. Amy says, you reminded me that I showed up in the academy with stuff. I often compare myself. Yeah, I would love to hear more about how you thought through, 35 more years of this after getting to it. Yeah, Emily, that's a really good question. So, okay. So for those of you who are staying back, we'll stay back for another half hour, and then I'll pick up like other questions that you're wanting to ask, or if you want me to work with you, spotlighting you, we can definitely do that. So Emily, I thought to myself, like, am I going to be able to do another 30, 40 years of this? And that was a very hard question, because the answer was no. Like the answer was hell no, absolutely not. And so then I just decided that I really need to figure out my reason for doing what I'm doing. And I need to figure out whether I'm contributing purposefully to my reason of being, to my reason for my purpose. And so I had to ask, is this absolutely in my best interest? Is that absolutely my highest good? Is that absolutely in my best interest? In the beginning, that was a very nebulous, foggy question. So now I have a much more clarified way of asking that question. And the way I ask that question is, if I only had 2 months to live, would this be something I would spend my time doing? You know, if I only had 2 months to live, is this something I would be doing? So if I only had 2 months to live, I want to make sure you know what I know, what I'm sharing with you today. I want to make sure that you know that these fears are common. Don't pathologize these fears. I want to share certain information with as many people as possible because it's not been normalized. You know, if I only had limited time, I want to help create a more compassionate higher education culture than how I found it. So I had to figure out my deeper purpose and then align on my work to that purpose so that I can feel like I'm filling up my cup every day and I'm not running on fumes, you know, and experiencing a lot of burnout. Doesn't mean I don't experience burnout. I do. And when I experience burnout, I just take that stuck place and I leverage it in the sense like I try to figure out what is it that I'm supposed to learn from this? You know, what is the stuck place showing? The stuck place is showing pay attention. Pay attention, something's happening, pay attention. So I just lean into it and I pay attention and I just want to know what is happening. You know, why am I stuck? Is this trauma? Is this something? What in me needs my attention? And so that's how I began to think about like when I'm mentoring people to figure out the whole human. So like when I was working with my mentee this morning, I said, here's the technical feedback, but really what I'm seeing is this. And she walked away saying, everybody can give me technical feedback. I need this other thing that you see because people will give me the technical feedback, but no one will know that after being harassed so much by education that I am pretty much on my fight or flight as highly activated. And so I'm ready to fight because I know that there's harm coming and I'm in a hostile space. But then I'm not writing for my people. I'm only writing to defend against the people that are attacking me, you know? And so to make that switch was what she needed to do. And so I had to kind of walk my own path to accept myself when I'm like not writing or writing shitty or stuck or depressed or whatever, to realize like I need to do things that fulfill me very, very deeply, and then I can model that and become the possibility model for somebody else. So then they will say, "Oh, it's okay to do this. Oh, it's okay to write creatively. Oh, it's okay to write in a very personal voice. Oh, it's okay to cultivate a critical voice. Oh, it's okay to break these rules." You know, so that's the kind of like inner work that I did, and it came through time. Like it took a while to come through. All
Thank you
right.
so much.
I hope that was good. Emily, was that good? Ask me
Yes.
a follow-up question.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really good.
Okay. I'm glad. All right. If I lived by the question, I would do everything different. Alicia, start writing down what you would do differently. Start writing down, just say, if you had 2 months to live, what would you do? Like, what would you do if you really seriously, and that is what should guide you to do the things. You know, it's not like, oh, I can do that later. You should do that now. You should start reverse engineering pathways to that now. It took me a little to reflect on this question, but this is mine. If I were to write exactly the way I want to write, I fear that I'd be critiqued for using methodologies and perspectives that weren't meant for me. That's really interesting. Adrian, would you like me to talk to you about this a little bit in a little bit detail?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, all right, talk to me. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I'm writing a dissertation on socially just leadership education.
Uh-huh.
And I'm really drawn to a lot of powerful women of color and perspectives that are different from my own and wanting to elevate those.
Mhm.
However, I also sort of fear that as a white person using these, that folks will critique and say like, well, this is not meant for you.
Yeah.
Or that you're, you know, you're taking it and corrupting it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I'll tell you a story. I had a former student named Kent Gillen. He wanted to work with a Chicana woman, and his dissertation was what he wanted to do was he wanted to use Chicana feminism to understand her experiences. She's a Chicana educator of desegregation in South Texas in the 50s and 60s. So I asked him, what is his entry point to Chicana feminism? And he said, well, What do you mean by entry point? I entered the library and got the books on Chicana feminism. No, I'm not mocking him. I did laugh at that point because I'd never heard anybody explain entry point like this. But then I thought, he's being super honest. That is probably his only entry point, because he's white, identifies as white. Um, he was left leaning progressive, so he still didn't unpack privileges, as much. And he was on the spectrum and generally fearful of people. So his whole thing was like, I just go to school, I don't even drive, I get on public transit, I go to school, go to my class, and then I come and hide in my apartment. Who am I oppressing? They oppress me. I hate people. People, they would say, like, he just did not like interacting with people at all. He was like, so it was a very hard thing for me to work with him, because on one hand, everybody has their intellectual freedom to study whatever on earth they want. Whether or not they should study it is a different story, but everybody has their own intellectual freedom to study whatever they want to do. On the other hand, when scholars of color write a framework, say for example, CRT or Lat Crit or whatever, when scholars of color write a framework, a lot of them are writing it thinking of their own people. Some people say nobody else should use it other than those people that for whom it's written, and other people say, like, unless we have cross-cultural communication and exchanges, then the fight remains only on one group of people to do that work. So there's multiple different competing perspectives in this space. You're going to have clarity as to why you want to occupy this space. And that's a deep question. It's not an easy question to answer. That's a deep question. The question is, so for you to understand how to answer that question, you're going to have to ask yourself, when was the first time you decided that this is the role you want to play? You want to stand in this very complicated intersection where you don't want to take somebody's voice, but you want to use your privilege to discuss certain things, and the primary audience with whom you're discussing is not people of color. The primary audience with whom you're discussing this are people that look like you. When did you decide that? Why did you decide that? What do you want to do with it? Because this is going to come with a high cost to you. High cost, high conflict. It will come with high cost, high conflict. Are you prepared? If so, how far are you prepared? There are people that have, like, what is it called, white nonsense roundup or something. They like come, you in social media, you tag them, and when some white folks start saying like racist stuff, they come and they handle it. So folks of color can tag them, and they're always coming in and handling that conflict. So essentially what you're saying is that I am committed to doing justice work. I'm committed to disrupting whiteness. I'm committed to disrupting privilege. All good things, but you got to trace your history too, to say, what is your history? Why have you chosen to occupy this space? Why have you chosen to do this? What are some of the areas you still need growth in? The humility is super important. And if you are working with communities of color, how did you gain entry, and how are you making sure that you understand that you're still a cultural outsider in that space? So these are very, very important ethical questions. It's not that you shouldn't do this. I mean, nobody should tell you what you should or shouldn't do this, but your thoughtfulness is super important, in this, and being transparent about that.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I really appreciate it. And I also identify with you both on the empath and late diagnosis with ADHD.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
As a woman, I
helpful
could ask this question of white scholars who want to occupy this space, if I'm honest. Yeah, I want to know. I absolutely want to know. I've met a lot of white scholars that I feel like they're riding on the currency of these theories, to build their own currency. So it's so important to be very honest about this, and to show what kind of work you have done, what kind of, yeah, we don't want another trap. Yes, exactly. Like that woman was doing that book, and like, all along it was fine until it got published, and then people knew about it, right? So people have their freedom to write about whatever, it just depends on, like, yeah, can you show how much work you have done? The trap womanism author didn't even cite the original author other than a footnote, and then said her graduate student reminded her of it. She didn't even, I mean, anyway, that was wrong on like 500 different level. Don't be that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. Okay, give me another one. Who else wants to go? I don't know who all are here still, like 500 different level. Yeah. Uh, so who's here from before? Sean, Sneha, Samiha, Galicium, Erica. Erica, I talked. Leah, are you still here? Alicia, you're here. Alicia, let's go. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it.
Yes. You're still here. Okay. Talk to
Yes.
me. What was the
So
fear?
my fear is being blamed and others blamed for their pain. And my research currently is on Black student retention. And it seems really annoying to me how administration is like, oh, we care about diversity, equity, inclusion. There's all this previous work talking about this, but then I'm like, oh, Black people have a bunch of deficits, they're to be blamed, but nothing changes. So I'm thinking about my own work, like, does this matter? Will things change if I get this thing published?
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay, listen. That's hard. That's hard because we just did a study in our institution where we looked at like how many people are DEI integrated in their syllabus, you know? So we did like a cross section of university syllabi. This was a grand study. And as part of the study, we also did literature review. Alicia, stuff that was written in 1960s is still happening today.
Excellent.
You know? Super depressing to hold that in your awareness. Super depressing. But we cannot only, that's what I was saying, like that's what sucks our energy, because now we are trying to like dismantle all of it. And I don't know that dismantling needs to look a certain way where all your energy needs to be invested. I think dismantling could be done by creating something else altogether that doesn't require a master approval, you know. Like it can be this conversation that we're just having. It can be something that shifts you away from that place of trauma to a place of possibility. It can be where we're dreaming together collectively of a future that is, you know, different from this, and then we're putting energy towards it. Like this is all I want to do, you know. That's why I told you, like, I have this nonprofit that I'm building, and I want to build a nonprofit to create these possibilities. I may not be able to change that entire system in my lifetime, but I can create more pathways and possibility models for other people. So I have, you know, and my other goal is like, how many people can I influence? How many people can I influence with this idea? Because I know that my influence has a ripple effect, because then they influence who they touch, and then they influence who they touch. And if we all do that in our own space, it may not be exactly in our lifetime, but we would normalize some things right now that are seen as deficit or deviant, you know. And I work for that. If I just look at the broad pattern, it would depress me like instantly. It would depress me. So I would say, like, start creating communities of practice where it operates in the vision of your dream, in the vision of your freedom. Like, way you can imagine freedom, like freedom with no deficit thinking, nothing. The way you imagine that, can you create some community around that? Can you bring some people and create some community around that? Then can you create possibilities with them? You know, so I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't diminish the pain or anything, but I would urge you to have the antidote to it. The antidote is the possibility, you know, like, so the problem is, you know, all roads have ended into racism, anti-blackness, slavery, enslavement, you know, because it has, and we have very raw data to show that, right? And the antidote to that is roads leading to freedom. You know, and so that would be something you would have to create. First, you have to free yourself, like free your own mind, free your own task. Do not make academia the arbitrator of your worth. You know, academia is not the arbitrator of your worth. Your spirit is, your guides are, your ancestors are, you are, but not academia, you know. So that's not.
That question you asked about if you had only 2 months to live, what would you do? I
Yeah.
would jump the ship. I'll be gone.
Where would you go? Where would you go?
I'll take my girls and we just go travel over the US and just learn. I wouldn't be here.
Why can't you make that happen now? Why can't you create a research agenda that requires traveling and learning?
That's amazing.
I'm just saying, like, think in the most absurd way. Give yourself permission to think in the most absurd way. And when you do, then tell some folks so that they can breathe energy into you so you don't feel isolated in that thinking.
Mhm.
Right? So breathe. I want to do the same thing. I legit want to do the same thing. I'm beginning to now look at like grants and stuff that I can apply to so that I can buy my time out and then do this. Like I want to continue to create academic wellness, you know, along with helping people with academic skills. I want to change the way people think about things, you know. So I'm legit going for a large Spencer grant to see if I can do that, you know. And
Awesome. Hope you get it.
I hope I get it too. Even if I don't, I'll still keep trying. But yeah, if I had 2 months to live, I want to make sure that academic healing and academic wellness is front and center for all academic work. You know, I want to make sure that that's what it is. And then yeah, then I want to travel around the world and learn how people do wellness and healing. Yes.
Beautiful.
So I would say the same thing. I would say the same thing for you is, you know, pause a little and say, what kind of research would allow me to travel? Start with Fulbright then, you know, start with a Fulbright and go somewhere. So I don't think it's I don't think it's that crazy even. And then if and when you come to S2S, I'll breathe more energy into it. I'll breathe way more energy into it and make that happen. I'll tell you this, this was in like 2010, I met a student who I asked, like, if nothing was a barrier, what would you do? And she's like, my dissertation, I would like to study moving classrooms. I'm like, what is moving classrooms? Well, all the students are on a treadmill and the teacher is on a treadmill. Okay. I didn't know that that was a thing. So I said, okay, let's do that. So we got some money and we created a classroom and then she did this. Now it's totally a thing. People have standing desks and moving this and moving that. And now she's like totally shining and thriving in that space because she wanted to move. And she said this would be great for, you know, neurodiverse students. And I would love to be moving around and not be tied to one spot when I'm doing work, you know? Sneha says, I did it. I went to India for dissertation data collection. Ethnography allowed me to stay in a school for a few months. Awesome. You can children with a Fulbright for sure. Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. See this energy pouring into you. You just have to say it in action. We're all powerful beings. We do not have to think that the academia or something external to us as the only source of power. We are all powerful beings. So when we tap into all of our own power and then pour into you, you will feel it too. They'll feel it. I mean, we're normalizing this for you. You know, why not? Why not, Alicia? We normalize this. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chinasa, you are still here, so I definitely want to touch base with you and see what's happening. Chinasa, are you still here? Is she still here? If not, Galicia, let's talk to you.
Hi.
Hi, Galicia.
I was giving people who were still writing their dissertations the opportunity to jump in because I'm done, but I had all these plans for publishing and I think I started working immediately after, and the pressure of trying to do well in a new job and that instability led me to prioritize what I was doing in the classroom. And it's as if I just don't have any energy. Yeah.
So when you said you fear that, like if you wrote whatever way you wanted to write, because I put your name down and I thought it was powerful. What did you say you feared?
That I don't want to write conventionally. I want to write the way that I want to write. And every time I think of journal articles, they just feel like they put you in a box. So I know it's about looking for the journals that feel right. And that's perhaps where I can get started, even if the writing is not flowing as I want it to. Yes, as I'm speaking to you, I'm thinking maybe that's the step I need to take. Journals that fit with poetic inquiry and autoethnographic approaches.
Yeah, there's plenty that will write that way. So I would tell you, I would tell you write as creatively with as much creative freedom as you want for yourself. Absolutely as much creative freedom you want to create for yourself. I'll tell you the journals who will accept this. First of all, mine would. Departures in Critical Qualitative Inquiry will, because Departures in Critical Qualitative Research. I am the editor of the journal, and I'm looking for people who are taking departures from traditional work and doing critical call work. And please break as many rules as you want to break. I'm interested in it. I am interested. It's a methodological journal, so you have to tell me what methodological moves are you making that's breaking rules. So what is that departure that you're creating? So that would take Journal of Autoethnography will take that. Qualitative Inquiry will take that. International Journal of Qualitative Studies in Education will take. Critical Studies, Cultural Methodologies will take. So you have options, so I want to tell you that don't limit yourself thinking that traditional journals won't accept it. What you then do if you're going to go off for tenure is you start telling people, like, instead of doing like H factor or index, you just write beside your publication the journal acceptance rate. Go with that, instead of the other thing, because you're going to say that the numbers are skewed because these are how larger social studies, and social sciences indexes, but within the specific space of qualitative research, the rejection rate is 95% or 90% or whatever. And you can do that. And that will show that you still got yourself into a top tier journal, because sometimes those rankings are not accurate for some of the qual journals.
The funny thing is, I don't even know if I'm thinking about that. I don't even know if I'm thinking about tenure track employment. I think for me, it's a question of when I put something out into the world,
Yeah.
I wanted to reach the audiences who will care.
Okay. Twofold on
Yeah, and I think that's what's holding me back, that I want what I put out there to be meaningful and not just to be a journal submission.
So one way to do that is, okay, so journals are always behind paywalls. So no journal, unless it's an open access one, most journals are behind paywalls. So if you're going to put it on a journal for publication and you want it to reach everybody that doesn't want to get it behind paywall, then do a reading of your work, live, record it and put it up on YouTube, and then just share that with people. Now, if you want to be like me, who's breaking rules and putting all the full text on ResearchGate, you can do that too, which is what I'm doing. I'm putting all the full text in ResearchGate, and unless they come and tell me not to, it's there. And so that affects my H-index rate and download rate and all of that, but I don't care. Who cares? I don't care about that. So my some of those rates are really low because I just freely give out the full text to people, and I don't play that game. So does that make you, bring you a sense of calmness about this?
Yes. I
Trust yourself. Your fear is so I almost don't think that your fear is a journal article fear. There's another fear underneath it.
yes. I think
Yeah.
so. I think it's wanting to be true to the work. I've heard that the work is different, the work is weird. It's not traditional. And I think, yeah, I think that's where I'm.
So embrace that weirdness. Then if that is the stuckness, like the work looks different, doesn't sound like traditional work, just double down on it. Of course it's weird. Of course it's different. Why wouldn't it be? I'm not talking about things the same way everybody else has talked about. I'm talking about it differently. I'm shining a different lens on it. I'm coming from like my own sensibilities, and this is what it looks like from my place. I'm not going to change that and perform like a sterile person, because this is how I'm processing. This is the way I process. And poetic inquiry is already established area anyway, so just start citing people on that, But I would say then double down, like all the ways why this matters to you to present it in this way. Like just, anchor in your power. Don't think like somebody else's perception of what this work needs to look like has to be your perception, unless it's somebody who you trust. Unless it's somebody who's a cultural insider, who's creative, and who is allowing you to think deeply through this. Like, so I had a culture. She wasn't a cultural insider for me. She was a friend. She's West African, and I gave her an autoethnography I wrote, and she's like, "I need to see more cultural rituals in your writing. You don't have it." And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm writing like all these different faith-based rituals of what happened when I was born in an autoethnographic piece. I've never written that personally before, but I trusted her opinion, and she said that this needs to have some ritualized narratives here. And I'm like, okay. I completely, plus she's a priestess and, Orisha priestess. So I'm like, okay, whatever you say is divine anyway, coming through divine source anyway. So I'll listen to you. But unless it's somebody who's really trusted, whose opinion you care about, otherwise double down on your stuff, hold your power. It's okay. It's okay to be weird. Weird is good. Weird is probably where you're channeling your own zone of brilliance, your visionary stuff. You don't have to be like everybody else. Weird is very good. I'm glad you're weird. Be weird.
Oh, it's so niche. I don't even. I think it's just a little strange that I had a great experience in graduate school. And they always say that your work, your deep work still comes after.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I am. I'm like, there was something I wanted to pursue. I mean, my dissertation came out how I wanted it to, but there was an element that I wanted to pursue that I left. And I think as I'm speaking to you, I'm getting a sense of, I think that's where that's my stuckness, that I left something, a way of expressing myself out. And I think I want to get that back before that it did not come out. Because I like what you said earlier, that yes, I wrote everything I needed to write on, and I want to get these articles out of my dissertation, but it's because I left that thing out. And I think that's what I want to bring in.
Love it. And it's
that I'm just gonna drop the word here. I take a bit of a mythopoetic lens.
Yeah.
And it's very, very niche that I just feel as if, will the audience get it?
Send it to me. Alicia, I want your mythical poetic lens. I want it. Send it to me. Send it to Departures in Critical Qualitative Research. I'm telling you, you have full intellectual creative freedom. So if nothing is restricting you and you want to write exactly the way you want to write, I want to see it. Send it to me. And if nothing else, you'll get, if it absolutely cannot be published, you'll get an editorial feedback from me. Otherwise, I'm sending it out for review and seeing what people are going to say. But I want to see it. I want to see this mythical poetic thing. Because if it's weird and if it's coming from something that we haven't seen before, maybe academia needs to see that and expand its way of thinking about doing things. So send it to me. I'm all about the weird. Listen, I have my own niche work, and I stuck to that niche work because it was a calling, and it has proliferated and became generative in its own way. If you are on your purpose and you're aligned with it and you're in integrity with it, the path will open up for you. Please trust that. Just stay in your power. Like, just double down in your power and your creativity and your weirdness and your poetry and all of those things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mang Fei said, my recent writing stuckness has been more to do with getting very absorbed with deep reflections on my experiences and identities, which is good in some way for understanding more and clearer about myself. So basically, I made sense of themes about myself, what things are really important to me, what were the deeper underlying issues with my experience. However, there were also traumas and pains when recalling some of those experiences. I need to be brave enough to face those unpleasant memories to figure out what is going on and the scars. Yeah, sometimes the participants' experiences, if they're similar to your own, it can be very triggering. So you need to have some wellness messages doing that. So thank you, Mangfei, for sharing that. No, I'm glad you shared. Thank you all for this beautiful community. Adrian, so thank you so much. Perspectives. Melba, powerful. The energy we manifest is amazing. During my dissertation data analysis, I walked the forest and animals showed themselves as I engaged in thought ritual data analysis. Wonderful, Melba. Wonderful. In my class, in data analysis class, I make people walk their data, mindfully walk their data. So I loved it. The owl called and showed itself when I was on the right analysis process. The snake showed with the need for change. The squirrel showed up when I needed to go back to the, oh, I love it. The hawk showed up when I had a wider perspective. I love this. This is awesome. Can you share the best way to access the manuscripts in our journal, Amy, like in departures in critical qualitative research? I think your university will have to have a subscription to it. I think that's what, and if they don't, just ask for an interlibrary loan for it. Yeah.
Thanks.
I've been writing a memoir about my accident. Is that a manuscript for your journal? Yes, definitely. Just, Emmy, as long as you can make an argument of why it's methodological and why it's a departure, as long as you, and what do you mean by walking your data analysis? Tammy, what I mean is you take the data and literally how, let me make sure I'm saying the name right. Melba was saying, you take the data and you just take the data and walk really slowly out in nature and just walk slowly and stay present with the data without any goal. Without any goal like, aha, I will have an inspiration or an insight. You just stay with the data and walk and see what happens. And then come back and be very, very quiet and write down everything that comes up for you. And then don't make a transaction with the universe or the nature that after my walk, I should have a theme. Don't make that, but really stay open to receiving whatever you're receiving and see what happens. All right, everyone, thank you for staying back. I really, silence as a methodological practice, that's something I presented on a conference. See? Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Talked about silence in my dissertation too. So yeah, absolutely. Weird is good, Galicia, weird is good. Sneha says, I wrote about meditating data and my co-chair wrote a comment for real. Yes, you should say yes for real. Say contemplative practices is a way of knowing and being. Yes, absolutely for real. You know, and depending on which wisdom tradition you're leaning on, put that as your ontology. You know, put that as your ontology onto epistemology. If you're doing meditation, if you're leaning on a certain wisdom position, lean on it. Lean on it and say, I'm leaning on it and I'm doing this. I've brought up certain wisdom traditions in my work. So there's some conversation in Hinduism about loka, and it's like a liminal territory. So I talk about hybridized locations for using that construct, you know. I talked about warrior monk, like my identity as a warrior monk, and I called myself Bhattacharya, you know, as a warrior monk. And those are the two dualities I moved through. So language, Sneha, language the stuff and call it that. Language it and cite it and call it that. I've been bringing in Shukumar Rai's stuff to talk about absurdity, you know, and why I'm talking about it. And Shukumar Rai wrote poems with nonsensical words, and I've been using that as a framework for doing data analysis and doing qualitative research to be as absurd as I possibly can, you know, and use absurdity as inquiry. So name it, bring it forward, name it from wherever you are located, Sneha. Like, so whatever the fusion perspective you have between the Eastern and now that you're here in the West, whatever that diasporic fusion perspective is, you know, concretize it, name it. And then if somebody says for real, you say yes, for real, I cannot lie. Are you going to try to tell me that when I'm sitting there and I'm engaging in a contemplative practice, and that is my way of knowing and being, that I need to say that it is not and come up with a different one that is not aligned with me? Like, do not get, you know, do not accept that. You can also say for real, like, for real, are you asking me this question? Because it's ignorant to ask that question. I have said this when Venus was writing the Black Feminist Thought book for my series. I literally said to the managing editor in Routledge, if Venus says her data analysis method is meditating and talking to the ancestors, she needs to have space to do that and say that in her writing. She does not need to cite a single human for that, other than to talk about her process. And then they backed off. be absurd. Just be as absurd as you can, because some of these rules and regulations and precedents were made with a certain type of perspective and a certain type of way of knowing and being, and that may not be compatible with yours. And if it isn't, then break some rules. Chinasa, I'm doing work on grief and wondering the best way to connect it to journals in my field at large. Oh, Chinasa, you were here. Chinasa, I have a couple of minutes. Do you want to come up and talk a little bit about it? And then we'll conclude. I was going to conclude, but I wanted to still touch base with you.
Thank you so much. I know you probably called my name. I sent you a quick message, but I was picking up my daughter and lost connection. But thank you so much for this opportunity. I think I put my comment earlier was that I'm finding it difficult to put my writing in terms of it being academic enough. And I think because I'm making the connection of doing work around grief, that I have to, sorry, give me one second. Okay, so my daughter came into the door. I think a big piece for me right now is that as I'm thinking about ways to communicate that, my field is in higher education. My field of study is higher ed. And so I finished a research project on grief leadership and looking at how institutional leaders are responding during these times. And so I've been wondering the best ways to communicate it and in which journals to put this work in, especially since I haven't seen a lot of grief leadership work out there. It's really nascent in a lot of ways. And so I think that's why I was like, I wonder if it's going to be academic enough for my particular field of study at this point. So
I will say, Chinasa, like when I was doing my dissertation, I was looking at like structures, invisible structures of oppression in higher education, like the hidden curriculum, and I looked at it in terms of the way international graduate students experienced, and then whatever they thought was weird or, like stood out to them, it was a good indication of the hidden curriculum and how it operated. What ended up happening was that even though the social context of the work was higher education would not want to touch any qual work at that time. This was 2005 with the 10-foot pole. Educational psychology is what the home department I graduated from, very cognitive behaviorist, quantitative, didn't want to touch it. So the only way I could do the work I wanted to do is to brand myself as a cultural studies interdisciplinary scholar. That's how I branded myself. So you may want to think about an interdisciplinary way of conceptualizing your work. And so then if you're moving through academic route, then you're going to say my work is at the intersection of this, therefore I publish here, here, here. So take like maybe like a review of higher education and publish a paper over there, but then the empirical pieces publish it where they are more qual friendly, because higher ed is still not that qual friendly. It is qual friendly, but it's like traditional qual friendly and grounded theory qual friendly. But anytime you're wanting to break the rules and do it from a culturally situated perspective, you have to make so many different types of argument to just even get your foot in the door, that sometimes it's just easier to just do it in another journal where you don't have to do that basic work. You can go a little bit deeper. So I would say go a little bit deeper.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. Okay, so take a look at the links. If you think you need to learn more about my mentoring program, ask me. Obviously, if we do the mentoring, we go way deeper than this. But if you do the mentoring, there is a part on the mentoring that you have an Ask Me Anything once a month, and you have access to that for lifetime. So you will never be abandoned. You will always have community. And I wanted that. I wanted to create that. This is so fun for me. This is what, like, I planned for an hour and I always go more than that because it's super fun for me to, if I could just share like 10 minutes of something and it moves somebody out of their stuck place, I'm good. I'm really good. But if you're moved to work a little bit more closely with me, then, just look at the information that I have. And then if that appeals to you, then fill out the form. And then I will invite you to an interview and make sure we're a fit, and then we'll get going. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.